Alright, good morning everybody. It's Nate Millett here from DigiFX. We are streaming, continuing the development behind the scenes look at Oasis Live. Today we're going in depth to the lava trap room, the lava chamber level we've been working on. And if you guys tuned in yesterday for a little bit, I started development on the main project, or the main level itself, mostly focusing on the back part here, where this false trap comes down and we have a guy come up, and that also lowers this wall right here, which will then reveal the real prizes behind the wall there. So we're going to continue that development today, and we're going to focus on some of the more adding some more stuff into the scene that surprises the player throughout the encounter on this boss level. So the first thing I really want to do is probably get in some more elements just so you can do this. And if you look over in the hierarchy right here, first off, let's play this, and let me show you what we accomplished yesterday. Surprises the player throughout the encounter on this boss level. So, let my stream going. Okay, so now we're actually playing the level. You can see we have some particle effects, and streaming and playing this it is limiting the frame rate here, but it still seems to run pretty good. So we'll go ahead and just work with it. I also have to change this name right here. This is an old name that I had. But as we move in here, you can see our player Sully is down by the steps, and we can have him move up to the higher level. And we set up a trigger. So if I come up here real quick, this is our trigger right here we set up to where when he walks past this, it enables the scene. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep the view kind of in this perspective so you can see it on both angles. Alright, so falls in, comes down, we have this lava monster come in. And the only thing I did not fix yet was there was, you saw a little flicker there, and I think that's because we're turning on a different game object when he appears, but I have to look into why it's doing that little flicker. But now we have this lava monster. He's just hanging out, and he's just looking around. We do need to make him actually walk around, and unfortunately Sully right now can't walk around either. But so far we had a good start yesterday in terms of making an interactive scene, having it interact with our player, and now we can continue doing that. So let's go ahead and just check out real quick and see if we can figure out why he's doing that little glitch flicker there when he comes up. Okay, so I think right now where's that guy? He's right here. He's turned off. Okay, so yesterday in this state we set up a global let's see, open the prefab here. Set up a global listener kind of thing here. So when we click on the guy, he will actually explode and disappear. But one thing we also did was we went into the secondary model that we're using, and try to find it for us. And it's right here. Lava Demon over here, and if I select this, we have two different FSMs on this guy. So the first one is just when he loads. When he loads, it disables the active one that comes up, and then it activates this 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 event right here, which goes back to the other guy. So a little bit of communication back and forth between the two different mesh objects. This is the parent lava mesh one though that we're going to do most of the controls on, and then the other mesh itself just gets propagated when you activate a trigger when you walk into it. So I'll go ahead and just back out real quick, and we need to figure out why it's doing that. It's making that little glitch there. So yeah, unfortunately I have to edit the prefab too, which is a little tricky because when you drag something in as a prefab you have to save it, and so if we save it, usually you can update it, but because this is a prefab in the folder waiting to be loaded, it doesn't actually update everything in all the scenes. So let's see what we have here. So go ahead and zoom on this guy. He's invisible, but I'll turn him on just now so we can check him out. Another thing I noticed that wasn't happening is it wasn't actually navigating a nav mesh. It did appear to come up and actually move around in place, but it wasn't walking around the area. So we have to double check and make sure that that's all in place. We also set up boundaries yesterday to where this guy can only negotiate this area of the level here, and everything else he's cut off because he can't cross those bounds. So it's an easy way of using some walls that we put in place temporarily to set those boundaries up, and then we can disable them so they don't affect anything else. But let's go ahead and just play this one more time and see if we can see what's going on and figure out when he comes up what happens there. Okay, so actually I'm going to restart that because I had him turned on already. So it looks like the animation starts right when it gets activated, which is good because you don't necessarily have to code that in anywhere. It'll just automatically work when it hits that state. Let's try this one more time. Yesterday I had some issues on Twitch when I was trying to stream, just practicing capturing a lot of development stuff, that they actually have a system that mutes your audio if you have songs that are copyrighted in the background, versus YouTube, which will just give, demonetizes it. And I'm trying it out today and seeing how it works on here, because I usually stream music the entire time I work, and it would suck if it cuts out a lot of the information on what I'm doing just because of some song in the background. But we'll see what happens. So we got the level loading again here. So we'll bring our little guy Sully up. He moves forward. He hits the trigger. It goes down. Yeah. So I'm not really sure what's happening there. I think it's the animation. It's when it goes from the animation state to the idle state. There's not a smooth transition there. I only know that because I remember setting this up yesterday. And so that's animation. I need the actual animator though. So animation, animator. And right here, I'm pretty sure it's from when he appears here to this idle state. And I'm guessing that's because there's not a smooth transition somewhere going on here. Looks like it overlaps pretty hard. And this is probably the part of Unity I have the least amount of experience with. I haven't really set up animation tweens using the animator. I've used mostly legacy animation I bring in through Cinema 4D and Maya and other 3D programs, just because it diversifies and gives you more options that you can actually use with 3D objects, whether it's in media or games or anything. It's a lot more powerful, and you can also create stuff in the back end there, and then it updates for the actual script that needs to run it. And it keeps it a little bit more efficient and clean in the front end of the development, just using the game engine. And you can focus more on the mechanics and how everything runs together versus a specific model that we will update. But here, I think if I bring this in a little bit more, this is just kind of a guess, this might fix the transition from them coming on and off, and I could be wrong, so let's just go ahead and try that. So unfortunately, it does take a little bit to load and check all the material assets we're using here, which is why I have that loading screen is kind of covering up some of these stuff loading in place. So I'm curious to see what happens when this plays here. So before I go in there, I'm going to click on this. I want to zoom out and zoom in a little bit so we can see if that's really what's causing the issue there. Okay, so it comes up. Yeah, so it's definitely that. And maybe if we extend it this way, we're just going to play around with this a few times and see if we can fix it. It actually might be something. What I don't understand is if this. Okay, so if you move that back there, I'm not sure why this idle wants to snap to the front of it. Oh, I'm guessing because that's the beginning. Alright, that's why. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's the issue right there. I think it had something to do with the fact that there was 2 objects in a row, and now there's only 1. So let's just see if that fixes it. Okay, so we move up here once more. We walk through that. Falls down. Alright, that fixed it. Awesome. So that was the issue. It just, when we had stacked those 2 right there, it was turning on and off the asset, which is why you saw that little flicker. So the morph into the new idle animation state worked pretty good. So we lucked out in that one. So now that that's in place, we can focus on the other assets we were talking about earlier. And what I would really want to do here is I want to make this. I haven't set up any attributes necessarily for the users engagement in any of the triggers. So right now we're just creating functioning states of stuff, and then we'll go back and we'll add the effects that they have on whatever's setting that off. But here, yesterday I created this little flamethrower thing in the wall. We also discovered that Sully was way too small. He went right under it. Let's see here. Yes. Okay, so you can definitely see it's a little bit sluggish because we're streaming there, but it works. That's all that matters. So we also didn't set up the actual effect that the master NPC will have on somebody coming in there, and it's using a passive AI system where it just wanders around and is in a boundary that is specific to that little area. Eventually, we want him to make decisions based on things of interest. It could be other passive NPCs versus an aggressive one that's territorial. And then also just the rest of us walking around just as players in the environment. But what I first want to do here is make sure, first let's check out and see what we got here. So we set up a simple on-off switch for this FSM. And let's go ahead and just run this again and see what it looks like. Okay, so it actually looks like it's a time trap, so that's what we're going for on this level. And there's going to be a few different kinds of traps or obstacles within the gameplay. There's going to be timed ones where you actually have to count out when they go on and off in patterns that we set. The other ones are going to be trigger objects that you either step on or walk through that are going to set stuff off. And so we're going to put about 3 or 4 in this area right here. And we will eventually add those in and try to optimize the overall gameplay aspect, because all of those functioning states and all those particles at once, even this lava right here, is going to slow down the experience on a phone. And after I build out a level and after I make sure everything's in place and everything, all the game logic's there, then I go in there and try to optimize the textures and make sure that we only have the necessary objects in the moment that we need to interact with, and that's just part of the migrating everything to a mobile phone. So I think we can go ahead and just duplicate this. First, what I want to do is actually bring it down, though. A little bit too tall. I thought I had some saw blades brought in. I don't think I saved those, so we're going to go grab those too real quick. So we'll go to build settings here, pop my build settings, Oasis Splash, save that out. And all this stuff that I'm grabbing isn't necessarily any items or anything in the Oasis core, it's just objects I put in for the animation for the title scene, and they're sized appropriately for this, and I can just reuse them. So I'll go in here. On top of that, they have some FSMs attached too, so we can reuse those. So I'll copy those, and I'll open up our lava chamber again. Gotta change the name of that. Okay, and then I can simply just come over here and paste those. I'll bring up to the staging area here. And this is all part of the staging area. I just separate everything so I know what's what. Then make sure everything that's in the game doesn't get affected by what we're doing. Okay, so because these were placed in a different place in the map, we do have to zero them out, and we'll have to move them in place. But the animation we set should still affect the distance, unless it's scaled differently, of course. Yeah, so it looks like they're pretty close, but now the only thing is I don't know which one goes which way. So we'll bring this over here. And those are a little bit bigger than what they should be. Unless we make them come out of the ground. I think if we put 2 little slots right here, we can make it seem like to come out of there, or emphasize that there's something behind them. Otherwise, it just looks like they're floating, which is never good. So I'll also just rotate these on the Z 90 degrees here. This one actually looks like it already is. Okay. And I believe these FSMs were on timers. Okay, no, never mind. They're just rotating the object, so we still have to set up or import the animation sets for these specific objects here. But let's see how fast these go. Okay. So now we have some major saw blades in our scene. Oops, Sully's stuck. Why is that? Why are you stuck, buddy? Wonder if I accidentally moved that ramp. Oh, no, I just stream. Okay, so they are moving in the direction, but they're also huge. They're way too big. So we got to bring those down a little bit. I also think the particles in the background are not helping our performance at all. We're gonna have to figure out ways to cut that in half. I don't think I can have as many as I have there. So we'll do that. We'll just rotate this one the right way, and I'm just gonna rename these to left and right, because we will be using that information for when we set up the animation for them. Right there. I'll put those into place, and we want them to start off hidden and then come out like you would if you were to step on a trap or a trigger object. I also think I have some items I've created here that we can use as triggers. The reason why you have to set up items for the trigger objects or the traps is you have to be able to disable them somehow. And in order to disable them, we have to put colliders and stuff on them so they work. So what I can do here is I can go Oasis, items, category, item. I think in the T for trap section, I think I have something there. May just have to use the visual version. Only thing I don't like about the Playmaker window is that you can't really scale when it's open. It needs a certain amount of size, so sometimes it's hard to use. Okay, so we have an arrow trap here, which we can use for also the flamethrowers. So we'll just bring these up here. And it doesn't really matter how it's oriented in terms of being zeroed out. What's important that it faces the area in which we're going to use it. So if I go to 0, maybe 0, 90, 90, 90. Maybe that's a 180. It's always a guessing game here. 180. Okay. 90, nope. 90. There we go. And now we can bring it out. And that's not too shabby, is it? The only thing is, he is pretty small. And so I think I'm gonna have to put it down here for it to actually affect our player. Maybe not. Let's see how tall he is. I also think it's important that you randomize this. Where else can we put him? Maybe down here on the steps are better. So these are going to be on a timer, so it's okay that you see these. Versus a trap, you're going to want to hide it more behind something, like some kind of overgrown mesh you put in there. Let's go ahead and cheat a little bit and say negative 180 right there. Okay. Okay, so where is our second item we created? Should be somewhere. You can tell my stream is definitely slowing down the performance here on my MacBook, but we're working. So this is a little big over here, but I think we can actually bring it into. It fits barely. We can also scale it like that, and I'll do the same for the other one. So we'll make that about a 0.4, right? Tuck it in there so it looks like it's part of the environment there. We'll also have to disable the information that pops up, because that could give away stuff too. So I'll bring this one down here, right here. Okay, so we'll just start with these two. We can probably put some more in, but I think two are good enough for now. And they're relatively separated, so we also should scale in these saw blades to a reasonable size, like something like that. It's still pretty big, but and we'll hide them behind these columns here. Looks like they're actually in the columns. Alright, so now that those are in place, we can align the flame in the trap itself so that when you destroy that or disable it, everything that's a child also gets disabled. And so we can just bring that down about where that little hole is, maybe tuck it in more right here, and we'll duplicate that, and we'll bring it over here. Play this. What's going on here? I'm interested to see what YouTube does about my music. Hopefully, I don't need any money for my stream. Alright, so now, let's see here.
Every time you love it and blind, so don't be getting confused. You're on your own to love is to lose.
Over here.
Don't last for long. Smile kiss just dies a phase. Lost bliss before you know you're on your own again.
And you can actually just, when you parent it, I forgot. When you parent something, it'll change that transform and you can just go 0, 0, 0, I think. Never mind. Did I parent to the wrong one?
It's time to get your head right.
Huh. Interesting. This is good. Okay, so that's why. So this one we have to rotate now. And we also probably want to offset how they actually toggle, but let's just see what it does now.
Stuck on repeat, looking out the window, thinking of all the times I didn't show. Should have cried and let me know if you ever thought I was letting you go. I'd rather you tear me apart.
And I also forgot. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the
so much effort when nothing to show. Tell me why laugh, why cry if the next
some of the
day
stuff
don't
for
go
performance
right?
here.
Why laugh, why smile if the next day your love has gone by? See for me sometimes lately, think I'm best on my own maybe. Double bed, one pillow, no lady. Knows my heart can feel that you hate me. Please forgive me for all my ignorance. Love lost, I left it in past tense.
Okay, and we have to make sure that these rigid bodies here don't have gravity on it. That's why they're falling. So you can turn that off. Same for this one. I also have found if you don't have a lot of mass, they do like a little floaty effect where they will just float off like a bubble or something, or a balloon. So see if that fixes it. Alright, so they are working, and they are at a good level. Alright. It's cool. I do think these need to be smaller, but I'm not sure if that will affect this. Okay, so let's also set up a trap for... We'll keep those there for now because they're doing their job. Toggle them off. So now let's focus on the saw blades. And I don't think I have the saw blades as items here. But I think I'm going to have it so you can disable the mechanism that runs them. I also want to come out of the ground at a 45-degree angle, kind of like an arc. See an arc? Like this. Oh, look at that. We actually have some space there we can use. That's not bad. That's pretty cool. It does seem like maybe I could push these pillars back a little bit more. Okay, we can do that because they're separate, which is good. So let's do that. And the only problem we have now is this stairwell here also needs to be pushed back. So I don't want to mess up any of the navigational parts of the map here, because that ramp is important for him to get around. But I think I could find out what is just the stairs. Oh. Well, I guess that's the stairs, so it affects everything. I just have to take these out of the stairwell. So I'll bring this up here. And now we can just... You also gotta move that, looks like, so... Everything here needs to go. Okay, so you can either snap to the view by using this tool right here, and you can just use that to align them. I usually just eye it. We have some gap now? Yeah, there does look like there's a gap, so that actually worked out for us. Maybe a little bit more. So we can... And then we'll probably also have to put one of these, like an invisible bridge to connect the navigational aspect of the floor. So that's pretty cool. We can even test out our blades now by going in here and seeing how they look. I dig it. That's what you'd expect to see in a trap, right?
There's a man sitting next to you with a scarf around his head, and when it's down to the last end, he could be the one that saves you. And there's a woman driving in the car.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. And so that's a good spot. Just trying to tuck it in and hide it so you can't see it. Just barely. And obviously, these wouldn't... Now that I'm thinking about it, they have to be twice as thick because they're not going to be set. They're not going to be in the same place. One's going to be staggered a little bit. Stacked, I should say. So we'll stack the right one here, and we will just bring it over here to see if that fixes the issue. Okay, and I'll bring it back over here.
All of my friends are settling down. They're only kids, but they're married now. Just follow the lights, follow the crowd.
And I hate to be chopped up by those. Still think they're too big though. So let's just go ahead and run this and see proportionally what size they are to the player here, and we can determine if we need to scale them down more. I've never really actually figured out the best method of scaling besides building like a 1x1 block and then finding out the actual proportional value of that in the real world, whether it's centimeters, meters, inches, and then using that as a control to determine when you're bringing stuff like real life objects. It's always been one of those things I've been trying to figure out. And I know in when you're using different 3D programs, like for instance Maya or Cinema 4D, and you bring it into a game engine, the scale factor is, I think it's like 1 to 10 or 1 to 100 is different. So you have to actually know and look into what you're bringing proportionally, because objects are always modeled differently from different people, and sometimes they use different scales, and that can throw off the realism behind the actual environment you're trying to create. And so that's something I'm constantly working on here. But those seem to be pretty good. So I still haven't really decided how I'm going to fix the disabling like traps and stuff. Our interface, we had built in some tools that you're going to be able to craft throughout, like the material collection and the other stuff within the marketplace right here that you can purchase. But I think there needs to be more of a sophisticated interaction between just building something, placing it, disabling it. I think you actually have to build in some kind of pattern puzzle game or some kind of clue, like a mini game within the instance to make it more interactive and fun, and also change it up. So that's something I'll think about. I'll probably ask around, get some feedback on what some good ideas are, and then we'll make that happen. But for now, just all the traps being set off is a good start in the right direction. So with that being said, we have to duplicate the trigger here, and you'll see in my hierarchy, just in the staging area here, I actually have parent objects for the different sets, so we can minimalize and stack them so we can see everything. This is part of the organization of the project here. So I'll just go ahead and put these in here, and these are passive traps. They just are on timer, so we'll say flame traps. Alright, too loud. Normalize those right there. And the NPC right here, I haven't added them to the trap section because I want to make sure it's its own object that can move around and be affected. So let's keep them there. He's fine. It's probably called Lava Demon Boss, right? So assets like these are invaluable. They're done by somebody that's really intrigued into it, and they offer them for free. And then with a little bit of extra work as a developer or a designer, you can change around the look and the feel, create skins, manipulate the model, and still give credit to the original owner. So it's a good way to save some money, but also bring in some cool assets from the public, which is what I'm all about. And if you are interested about where I get a lot of the 3D stuff, it's like anything. You have to search the web and find the best assets and figure out what makes sense. The two .coms I use is Sketchfab. It's a really, really good site with a lot of really talented artists that give away, not always. They offer their assets with accreditation as the creators. on there. And then also Turbo Squid is another one I use. Turbo Squid actually has a lot more paid assets, but they do offer free ones. But I found the free assets on Turbo Squid don't compare to. I shouldn't say this. There are some good ones, but Sketchfab has won me over in that sense. And there's other sites like Free 3D. There's CAD sites you can pull stuff from. And of course the asset stores within Unity are another good resource I use. But you always want to find something that's that's set up more for a game engine, not just a model set up for, say, an animation, like a 3D animation for video or TV, or maybe CAD, like manufactured 3D assets. They all have their own purpose, and usually CAD assets are the opposite of what you really want, because they usually have a lot of polys, and polys equal mesh, and those are essentially, a poly is in a 3D object. It connects and it creates the object and the shape by adding polys together. So you always talk about the poly count, and a CAD model usually has a very high poly count, right? So low poly, high poly, mid poly, and in mobile you want low poly as possible. And so, believe it or not, like square objects like this, although they look big and expensive to use, and when I say expensive, I don't mean a value, I mean memory usage, they're actually quite simple, because there are very few polys, and the texture and the detail in the texture does a lot of the work for you. And so that's another thing that we're trying to obviously optimize and keep in mind. Textures are a big issue when it comes to propagating assets. So one of the solutions we use for that is just migrating stuff through the cloud, and also propagating stuff in time when you need it, and getting rid of it when it's not important anymore. So cleaning up your track, so to speak. I'm gonna go ahead and get this back to. I'm gonna stream for another 10-15 minutes, and then I'll come on later today and we can look at a new level that we'll be working on. Unfortunately, I have to move my car to the meter on a Saturday, so I had to stop. But I'll be back, and see here. Okay, so we got our saw blades in place, and let's make sure we clean up everything we're not using. And lastly, we want to create our saw blade trap parent group, right? Oops, what did I just do there? Did something funky. Okay, so we'll say saw blades trap. Okay, so we have a scene that's, or a staging area I should say, that's cleaned up a little bit for us, so when they're ready to go we can drop them in the appropriate areas. And the false wall I'm still figuring out. That's probably something we'll have to figure out once we'll have to build it into this guy dying here. So remember I showed you a little bit earlier that we have two assets with him. I'll show you that in a little bit. Might do that later. Let's focus on the traps here. So we need to duplicate this trigger right here. We can make a new one, but it just makes sense to duplicate a new one and then move it to the right parent object. And it'd be cool, what I want to see in the future with the game engine, if we can actually create different or add different icons, like for different things, like you see in the object. That way when you're going through here, instead of looking at the name, you can see the icon and know what it is. Because the prefab and non-prefabs are good, but still, like, the fact that everything's a game object, you do get overwhelmed when there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of layers that each have their own scripts. And organization really is the only thing that fixes that. And hierarchy and numeric systems. And also on top of that, the way the game loads all the functioning states, it actually reads like you would in code or a book. It reads from the top down. And so you have to make sure you put whatever needs to be loaded last or with the most important loaded first, like a lot of management systems that are going to run the back end aspects of the game or the application you're creating. Those have to go first, and then you can do the more visual function, the fun stuff last, loaded on top of that. So here we have our saw blades now, and we have this new trigger we created. I think for this one it's going to be just, if you're running too fast, it's going to get you. But if you're creeping, you'll dodge them. And again, the size and the shape of the trigger really doesn't dictate when it sets off stuff. That's just the threshold or the area in which you can affect the state of it. And it's also invisible, so only the developer, the person setting up these triggers, can see the proportional value, like shape of it. So we'll put it about there. That looks cool. And it disappears, so that's why it's also good you organize it in its own place before you lose it. Otherwise, you're going to forget it's in the scene. And unfortunately, Sully can't jump, so you can't get over that. The only thing I want to check is that, remember we set up, there's like a ramp here. We want to make sure that ramp is not making it. Okay, so it's there a little bit, and there's not much poking out, but there's enough probably to affect it. So that's fine, that's good enough. And we'll leave it like that. And so all this trigger is going to do at the moment is similar to what I was having some issues getting to work yesterday. Is we're just going to play some basic mesh animation that gets set off. And I think the issue we had yesterday was I need to figure out if it was the play automatically function or if it was just the fact that I had moved the model around after I set the animation. And replicating that so I can learn to know, to troubleshoot down the road would be greatly beneficial, just for not wasting time trying to do the same thing, replicating the same mistake or having the same solution. But it would just give me knowledge about create more advanced animation sequences using Playmaker. And part of the reason why that happens is because Playmaker is a third-party component you add on top of Unity, the game engine. So it not only uses its own scripting language, but it has to have a bridge. It has to bridge the gap between how Unity wants to communicate with everything and how Playmaker wants to integrate itself. So there's a little bit of extra code going on to make it happen, but it all works. Here, okay, so I'm interested in how the animator can play a part in these tweens. The first time, one of the very first successful times I've done some customization of the basic setup was what we just saw with the NPC in the back there, how we morphed and meshed the transitions together to where it was smooth. And that may be something we can use here, but I do prefer using just custom animations. And you can see here we still have these in place from the last time, and if I just click on this, unfortunately it's not going to work because the animation was set up at some other place in the environment. So that actually made us lose it right there for a second. And so this doesn't really help us, these key points, so we can delete these and unfortunately start over. But there's only two, so it's not a big deal. And in this specific keyed sequence here, we want to make a bell curve, or we don't want it to be linear. We want that to come up and follow, I wouldn't say a path, because we're not going to set up a path for this. We actually may have to now that I think about it. What do you think about that? I'll look that up because I'm not sure the best methods to do that. I know if, let me see, animate game object on path, on curved path, Unity. Let's see what the internet tells us about that. Yeah, spline, that's what we want. Alright, let's see what Graham says here. Okay, so let's see what this person says is a solution in the asset store. So we definitely can use a spline to do this, and I do think this is a. Don't tell me it's. Boo. Just forward us to the home page. Doesn't help us anymore. Okay, so that didn't help us at all. On spline. So this person's using nodes, and we use a similar technique for our AI, our NPC hostile NI. They wander using objects of interest and the avoidance, and then when you come in a certain area of interest of what they're looking for, then you'll have a higher priority and they'll come after you. But I don't know if this is. I mean, this is a curve, but I feel like there's an easier way to. It's not that I don't want to do the research, I just feel like there's a video out there of somebody showing an easy way like this one in here. Okay, so it looks like they're also using this. So maybe okay, makes sense. Bezier curve, similar to what you'd use in After Effects. Like how he's animating a cat in a figure eight. It's funny. Okay, so he's actually creating a script that does this, which is interesting. That makes sense. So I didn't think about that, but that's probably the best method of which we can use something like that. So let's see if we can find the script that he's using in the. Let me see if I can say. Let's see. Now we know there's scripts out there for this. We can say Unity, Bezier, curves, script. Let's see if we can find something like GitHub. this. This looks like the script he was using, to be honest. Alright, so I think we found our solution for the effect, the movement effect we want to use. And I'm just going to go ahead and unpackage this, and we'll open it up and check it out real quick. See what it does. This is weird. What kind of file is this? It gave me this weird executable, which means I don't know what the extension of it is. It did open up the script though, so I'm gonna assume it's a C# and maybe add the extension to it. Let's see if that fixes that. See what that does. Okay, so that fixed that issue there. And again, I don't know if that's appropriate, but it seemed to do it for us. And I'll just reopen this real quick so we have the colored version right there. Okay. So here is our Unity Bezier curve script. And the only thing is, this is using Canvas. And we're not using Canvas, we're using 3D Space. So I do think splines are going to be, unfortunately, what we have to use. So I just thought about that after watching that. The Canvas animation is always going to be different than the environment. So say 3D animate object Unity curve. I don't know why I said 3D animate, because that's meant to animate. Okay, so it looks like we actually have animation curves, but yeah, unfortunately this curves the proportion or the value of a parameter of an object though. So I don't think this is what we want. We want to animate on a curve. Animate objects on curve. Unity. Parabola. This one looks cool. Alright, I'm gonna have to wrap this up and move my car, but we will find the script, and then the next series I will go ahead and enable the curve effect, and I'll show you a new level we've been working on. So I'll go ahead and download this right here, and I will get it enabled into the game. And if you're interested in this specific video, here it is right here. It's called by Little Games right here. Moving along Parabola. Parabola, I think is what it's called. So I'll check this out. I'll get it enabled, and then we'll get back into the development aspect. So this is Nate Miller from DigiFX, and see you next time.